Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of Q&A with Qlik webinar series. We're excited to have all of y'all here today. Today's topic, what we'll be covering is Qlik Replicate tips, which will hopefully help those who are new to the topic or existing users looking for tips on the subject. This is a live question and answer session. So what we would ask you to do is put those questions in the QA panel below, and we will try to get to them all. Before we get started, there's just a few things we want to go over. Our link for the survey is going to pop up at the end. It is a QR code. That QR code is just a survey, less than 2 minutes, just telling us how did you like this session and what did you think about it. We do have an upcoming session next month. Here is a QR code where you can actually register for that. Scan it with your phone. It will take you to the page. You'll register for the next upcoming Q&A with Qlik. So, and again, today we are covering the topic, Qlik Replicate tips. My name is Emmanuel Herndon. I am one half of the co-hosted team here at Qlik, and I am a digital customer success specialist who's focused on helping customers from trials to renewals and in between, enhancing their customer journey with videos such as this one and webinars such as this one here. I am not doing this alone, as mentioned before. My colleague Troy is helping me. Will you say hello, Troy?
Hi, everybody. My name's Troy Rainey, and happy to work with Manny on this one, and we got a great panel for you today. Let's go ahead and introduce them. So, Kelly, want to say hi?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Kelly Hobson, and I am a support engineer with the Data Integration and AutoML group.
Thanks. Alan?
Hello, I'm Alan Wang. I'm also part of the support group for the Qlik Data Integration team.
Great. Swati?
Hi, everyone. This is Swati. I also belongs to support team, and I'll be working on Qlik Replicate tool.
Thank you. And Bill?
Hi, this is Bill Steineagle. I work in support for QDI as well. Thanks.
Thanks. Looks like a young buck there in that picture.
Yeah, that's an old LinkedIn picture from
Nice.
IBM days.
All right. Well, let's. We've already got a couple of questions coming in. We're going to start with the first question. What should be checked prior to upgrading Qlik Replicate? Swati, you want to take that one?
Yep, I'll go with this. Usually, before upgrading, right, it is always recommended to check the accumulated release notes, to understand about the fixes that was done on that particular version, and also the user guide for new changes, because there will be limitations tab, where we can go and check what are the limitations that will be applicable, and before upgrading. And also, usually, I think in user guide we have a process how to upgrade, taking the data folder backup and also the entire server repository JSON backup. These are we should consider them prior upgrading to Qlik Replicate.
Great, thanks.
I'm going to add to that as well. Before you check any endpoints, you also want to check the driver versions and the database versions. Make sure the version of Replicate that you upgrade to will support it. If there's anything that's depreciated in a current version of Replicate, you may end up with tasks that will not work.
Okay. I see a couple of questions are getting addressed in written form. Let's try and bring them up so everybody can hear the question. There was one. Can Qlik Replicate writes to QVDs as an endpoint? We're talking about Qlik Replicate on-prem.
No, Troy. Using Qlik Replicate, we cannot, but there is currently we are having this QCDI. So using that QCDI only, we can write to QVDs as an endpoint.
And side note there, if they write to a file target creates a CSV file, they can load that to the QVDs, I believe. So there'll be an added step in the legacy replicate and not the QDCI, one spot session.
Thank you, Bill, for that. There was a question that was answered in written form. Just want to go over it. Any documentation on Python API? I think Kelly gave a link, which I would share. But Kelly, do you want to go into more detail?
Sure. So this, for the API tools and engagement, we point people to the Enterprise Manager documentation, and it has the full set of lists of the API documentation and commands you can use. And I dropped that directly to Mike, who asked the question, and also looks like we're going to share this documentation as well via this link.
Yeah, that's what that looks like. Just wanted to bring it up. Thank you. All right, next question. Is it possible to join tables within a Qlik Replicate task? If you need to transform replicated tables to a different data model in a subsequent processing step, how can you access only the changes without processing the entire database?
Yeah, I can go with, and my team can add if I miss anything. So actually with Qlik Replicate task, no, but as I stated, right, we are having the QCDI tool, like we're using that we can. In QCDI, actually, like we can have SQL transformations like DB tool. So using this QCDI, like we can.
Great.
Can I add to that, Swathi?
Yeah, Abel.
So with replicate currently, you can do the store changes option. And then that create just basic the changes for those certain tables. You would then be able to do joins and redata model, like with the Compose product or other products on the CCT table.
Okay, thank you. We do have another question from participants, and it's, are there any future Qlik Replicate plans to support Oracle Autonomous, yeah, sorry about that, as a source endpoint?
I think we should take that back to the lab and follow up with product management.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have anybody that can speak to the roadmap today.
Right,
but and if not, I wanted to just point out that there's on the Qlik community, there's our ideation forum, and our product management team keeps a close eye on that. So if it's not happening, it's a good idea to post that suggestion there and get some colleagues in the community to upvote it. And I'm sure it's something that people will pay a lot more attention to when customers are in that forum asking for it. Great. All right, next question. Is single sign-on or SAM authentication on the roadmap for Qlik Replicate on-prem? Oh, another roadmap question. Anybody have any insight to that one?
We have to check for Qlik Replicate, but it is available on QEM. But if it is for Qlik Replicate, yeah, we have to check that.
It's available on what was that acronym you said?
Enterprise Manager.
Enterprise Manager, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. It's broad, but I think it's good to ask. What are some of the new features that we should know about? Any good documentation that can be shared?
Yeah, as I stated earlier, before upgrading, we have to check a couple of things, right? Same way, for any new features, like we have to check for the release notes for that particular version. So usually we'll be having that link. I can share that link in the chat, release notes link. If we go to the user guide, below we'll be having a option to select the release notes for that particular version.
The release notes there?
Yeah.
And I'll post that so everybody can see it.
I can.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And another quick note, if you scroll up on this this documentation, on the left-hand side, there's a section called What's New for each new release.
Yeah, it's good to keep an eye on that. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Next question. That's a bit of a thread here. Prerequisites are incomplete. We don't see any libraries like Enum 34. Also libraries like AEM client. I'm not quite sure if I followed. Does anyone else
So, yeah,
want to address that?
yeah. What specific prerequisite is it being asked? All the prerequisites for replicate are defined in the user guide, and it should be the ODBC requirements. For QEM Enterprise Manager, I'm not sure if that's the question. So we wouldn't have a library Enum 34 that I'm aware of. If you can provide an example, I'd be happy to. So AEM client, I believe, referring to the Enterprise Manager, which doesn't require any client. That's just the installation of the product.
Okay, next question. Will API support adding and deleting endpoints soon? Just now supporting editing existing. So looking for an API that will allow you to add and delete endpoints.
So I believe that's a script that you would run against replicate. I could take that back as an action item. I believe. So they want to use a scripting tool to be able to add and delete endpoints from replicate, if that's the question.
Yeah, that's how I understand it as well.
Okay.
And they're already doing it with editing, but not editing, not
Right.
adding and deleting. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Also
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to add on that because of the whole repository that gets updated, that would be have to take it in consideration as well.
So inside QEM, there's definitely APIs already that exist for deleting endpoints. For replicate, I'd have to check, but due to most of these repctl commands not being supported for certain commands, you have to put in the ideation to bring more of them into the supported list and adding them to the user guide. But as of now, Qlik Enterprise Manager does support deleting endpoints of APIs.
Okay, thank you. We have another question, and it says, I have a 4-column table with more than 3 billion records loading in SQL Server, but Replicate forces me to use parallel loading. Is there a way to force Replicate not to use parallel loading? Sorry about that.
Yeah, actually, like parallel loading is an option that we select. But if we don't want to use that option, we can ignore that. And still, if customer wants to load the huge tables, right, without using the parallel load, they can use the pass-through filter based on a date column or like that. Using the pass-through filter, also they can load the table, huge tables. But parallel load by default, it won't be checked. That is an option that we select, and we divide the table into equal segments based on the PK. Or if the table is already partitioned at source, we can select that partition option also. Based on the partition, like it will divide segments.
Okay, moving on.
You can find the parallel loading settings if you click into the table itself. It's under the table settings and not a task setting.
And just side note, for parallel loads, it would be for speed, obviously. So just wondering why they would not want to use that option, unless it's a load on the source side.
I mean, this is all about tips, so if you got a recommendation, feel free to speak up.
Sure.
somebody's asking if there's some documentation on all replicate commands with examples.
The currently supported repctl commands are all listed in the user guide. If they're not in the user guide, it's not officially supported, though there are ones that you can use. You may find some of them listed in community posts that aren't in the user guide. Feel free to use them, but as we know, it's not officially supported if it's not listed in the user guide.
And Alan, by user guide, are you referring to help.qlik.com?
Yes, I am.
Okay. If you have a link to add to this, that'd be great.
All right, thank you. Next question that we have. Why does Oracle source table requires a primary key to replicate to an Oracle target, but not require a Azure Data Lake Storage, ADLS?
Yeah, like to apply DML changes, we need PK for RDBMS target, but ADLS is file target, so that is the difference.
Great, thanks. We got a question about upgrading. If upgrading from 2 versions behind the current version of Qlik Replicate on-prem, do I need to upgrade both versions, or can I skip the older upgrade and just upgrade to the newest? It's a good question.
Yeah, actually for upgrading, right, there will be a path, like if customer wants to upgrade from 6.6 version to latest, like in accumulated release notes, we are having the path. So based on that path, they have to go. I think it will be mentioned in the user guide also. We need to follow the upgrade notes from the user guide, and we have to, yeah, and customer should go the recommended way. Even if we skip, it will work, but it is always recommended to follow the notes.
And what do the notes say?
Yeah, I can check that. We can give an example. For example, customer want to upgrade from 2021.11 to latest version, then they have to go with particular versions, right? So I can make an example of that, and I can provide like where they can go and check that link. Just give me a second.
Thanks, Swati.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Troy, if you can move to the release notes or inside the release notes, it will give you a version
Yeah.
in which you can upgrade from and the version you should upgrade to. If you scroll all the way down to the PDFs.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And move to one of the release notes, the very first link.
Yeah. Migration and upgrade. Just click there. And this is
paths.
how. Yeah. So they have to follow this.
That's great. I appreciate that, walking us to that documentation. Great.
All right, thank you. Next question. It says, anything in the roadmap for support of integration to MQTT for IoT devices if there's the protocol for transport? If this is the protocol for transport?
This would be another one we could set aside and follow up with our product team. But also I think this would be a good idea to request on the ideation page to get some traction from the group that's reviewing those requests. But as far as I know, I've not seen MQTT or Mosquito support from Replicate.
On that topic, we've got another roadmap question. They always come up, especially after Qlik World. Any roadmap to support cloud ERPs to extract data via APIs where database access is not possible? I know Salesforce is supported, but would like to see more systems on the list. Any insight, anybody? Otherwise, it's definitely another one we could move on and forward that to our product management team. And Manny's also posted a link to the ideation page in the Qlik community. So it's definitely something to take a look at.
And for that question on the roadmap for cloud ERPs, we have Salesforce, MongoDB. It's basically the ones that are under the endpoints served. But yes, we can follow up. But if there's something not listed, an ideation will be best as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question. We replicate our data warehouse to clients. What is the best practice when we have to truncate and reload a fact table due to so many changes? And parentheses, faster than insert, update, and delete. Anyone have any ideas of an easier way for them?
Fact table, I think this is related to Compose that we have to check with our Compose experts.
Well, we'll have to see if we can find an answer to that and get back to you.
I also mentioned that you can ask questions within Qlik community because there are tech support experts there who are monitoring that. So if you ask that question in Qlik community, I'm sure that someone will give you an answer or point you in the right direction for this.
Okay, our next question. When a connection issue happens and we need to resume or reload tasks, is there a way to run all tasks at once?
Through Replicate, they cannot, but if they have a enterprise manager, like we can select all tasks at once, and using that, like, yeah, they can resume all their tasks. But with Replicate, they can go one by one only. We are not having an option to select all the tasks. They can install QM, yeah, and through QM they can add the replicate server, and whenever this kind of activities happens, they can select the tables and they can resume.
I just wanted to add a comment to that. If you're running with Logstream, that's just a no, because there's a timestamp and timeline that the replicate is free from. So,
okay, next question. How does somebody access Postgres database that resides on a QEM? I guess is that Enterprise Manager?
Yeah.
Qlik Enterprise Manager Windows Server to access Enterprise Manager logs for analytics purposes.
This, if they have username and password, like they can connect to Postgres on QEM server, same like other Postgres instances, or else like they can use third-party tools like dbeaver.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, I've used dbeaver or pgadmin as the Postgres client that you can, if you have the login information, you can connect to it.
Okay, thank you. Next question. We stopped tasks to allow for source database changes and refreshes. When trying to resume, processes many fails with ISN backup errors, trying to find backup older than we maintain. Any tips for avoiding, as it then requires a full reload?
So they resume processing, they're getting an error.
Yeah.
So that would depend on the database maintenance, how long the tasks were down, and the retention period on the backups, and where the backups are being read from. So depending on your source, if you have archives, you can change some of the source endpoints to point to just the archives or just the backups. But it's dependent on the retention period of the transaction backup loss.
Is there a best practice for how long to keep those?
It depends on the incoming changes, the amount of logs, the size of the transaction logs. It's all dependent on the source side.
Yeah. Okay. All right, next question then. Is there a notification process that we can sign up for to proactively receive emails when new releases are available? Sounds like the support updates blog to me. Anybody else have a better one?
Not that I know on the top of my head. We can look at the downloads page to see if there's a subscription.
Well, I definitely want to plug the support updates blog. If you guys haven't subscribed to this one yet, you should. Well, we had a blog post about this session today, but we also make posts in here about maintenance happenings, new releases, anything you need to know about, we end up posting here. So this is definitely a good one to subscribe to.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Is there a console command line to start, resume, stop a replicate task without having to use the Enterprise Manager API?
Technically, yes. I'm going to have to look to the user guide if it's listed in there. Well, it is repctl start, I believe, and then the task name. I will need a minute to check if it's listed inside the user guide.
Sure, thanks. It's always good to have some documentation to back it up. All right, well, Alan's taken for that. I'll move on to the next question. How does Replicate handle independent data marts in order to avoid spaghetti architecture? What is the best practice in this case?
I think this also comes under Compose. This we have to check with internal data marts.
Okay.
And another note, just as just depending on how their data mart is structured, we also recommend, our professional services team can help with implementation, like taking a good look at your environment and your tables and what you're working with. They can help give some guidance on best practices when looking at your full system and what your goals are.
That's a good plug there. They can definitely help with that.
Okay, thank you. Next question. While importing tasks, are there plans to introduce a way to merge tasks? Any takers?
Well, importing tasks. I think currently we are not having this kind of option to merge tasks. This should be like a feature request.
Yeah, feature requests or the QCDI maybe has some functionality with this, which is one of our newer products on Qlik Cloud.
Yeah, there's no current way to do task merging in the UI. What most people do is they export the task JSONs, and they copy and paste tables over. That's a quicker way of managing it without having to add tables one by one to the UI. But you have to take note that you need to be really careful in keeping the syntax in the same way, or that JSON will not import properly. And I'd like to go back to the previous question of the repctl start and stop tasks. They're not officially listed in the user guide. I can provide you with a community link that has these repctl tasks, but note that these are to be used on your own and not within support.
Yeah, I just posted that link. Thanks.
Yeah, and the importing merging tasks, is that like you want to export one repository to another, or maybe a little more info on there? Because we do have that capability.
Okay. Next question. Is parallel loading an option with Azure Data Lake Storage target?
Yeah, I just checked the user guide and we are having an option. Parallel load is available for ADLS target. I just pinged the user guide link where it states the source endpoints and target endpoints that support parallel load.
Thanks. I was just moving things over that you posted. I didn't realize it was about that question. Hadn't read it yet. Appreciate that. You're moving ahead.
All right, thank you. Next question. Qlik Replicate handles foreign keys in the question. Does Qlik Replicate handles foreign keys? And in parentheses, they says, during some tests we made, we noticed timing issues using target lookup filling with FKS.
No, only with primary key. But in case if you observe this kind of scenario, I think we have to take a look, and we recommend you to create a support case on this. But if anyone wants to add, like,
Yeah, that would be batch optimized and transactional apply, I believe, where obviously transactional apply is slower. But back to Swathi's point, may get back to you. Because if you want to keep relational database integrity, which is what they're doing with foreign keys, then that's transactional apply. Bulk apply, we can't retain relational integrity. So.
Okay, next question. When you encounter an error in the log like this below, failed to get enum value for name int tab, what would be your interpretation when you see this type of error? Any ideas, I guess, is they're hoping for?
Just doing a quick look internally. This might happen if you have duplicate tables in the business group for your SAP source. If that's the source that you're looking at, that's where I've seen that guidance. I would advise checking if you have duplicate tables in business groups for the SAP source. If you have duplicates, eliminate them. That's a good place to start. But if it continues, and I would say go ahead and open a support case and we'll take a look.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Any roadmap to support Snowflake as a standard source endpoint?
currently no for Qlik Replicate, but I think yeah, we have to check for, or like whether there is any roadmap. But with the, as I'm aware, no.
Okay. Next question. The link for the replicate command question only brought me to the introduction section. Ah, okay.
So
Looking
I'm
for some
gonna
more
expand
follow-up.
on this. For the most part, these commands are listed throughout the user guide. If you search specifically for repctl, you'll find them listed everywhere. In the installation part of that user guide, and the upgrade part of the user guide, you will find certain commands to export the JSON definitions of the host server, etc. There are a few more repctl commands listed in the user guide. It's going to be a little hard to kind of bring section to section in terms of where they're located. Just use the search function and you should be able to find repctl commands throughout the guide. There should be a PDF version of the user guide. I can bring that up and you can do searches on that.
And I just wanted to add on the Snowflake, there is the ODP driver you can use to point to Snowflake. Usually that's done by professional services because it's a non-standard endpoint. So.
Thanks for that, Bill.
Sure.
Next question. So they have Qlik On-Prem and they're looking for what's the typical upgrade path to SaaS? Is there any documentation on upgrading from on-prem to SaaS? And I know there's a lot of people working on that. There's whole project managers focusing on that, but I haven't seen the actual documentation yet. Does anyone else know?
I'm not sure if there is one officially out there, but I would say I think it should be coming soon because I know that we're starting to have more QCDI customers, which is our cloud product, and that there should, I would say, should be more as far as like migration or how to move your similar replicate task to that type of product, which is then hosted on the cloud. But I think that may be one to table and follow up with to see after we search around a little bit.
Okay, thank you. There was a question, I think it got missed and sent to the answer section, but we'll just go over it. And the question was, we are considering using log stream in a OLTP for cases where we are normalizing tables. We would like to know if it is safe in cases of failure to restore log streams tasks without using staging tables.
I don't believe so. It's not that we use staging tables. When you use logstream task is set up to just read from the transaction logs and then write them to the server. And then you set up your replicate task to read from the replicate server, where basically all the changes are defined. It's logstream basically makes a copy of your transaction log, puts it in this replicate server, and then your replicate task reads from that.
Okay, we're in the final stretch here. We'll see how many questions we can get addressed before we run out of time. The next question, we don't use compose, and I've asked the question of the community. We have to disable the replicate article, truncate the table, then reload the table. I guess the question is, any advice on how to do that?
SQL Server, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I think we'll have to make some assumptions here.
Yeah, because
go with your best bet.
Yeah, yes, sir. A replicate article table in SQL Server is an article. So I just want to make sure we understand the question on the source I have.
And I think, yeah, if we want to remove the table, right, first we have to disable the replicate. I mean, on the article on the SQL Server side, then only like we'll be able to remove the table. Otherwise, we won't be. I think that's their question.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Are any SAP transports required to use the new SAP ODP connection type?
That's a good question.
Yeah, for ODP connection types, I would just follow the prerequisite. Any transports, it would be listed there.
Moving on to the next one. How to get connected S4 HANA Cloud with Replicate using ODP endpoint. There isn't much documentation available on the user guide for this.
We can take that back and share update to that. It's a newer endpoint, and we can definitely share documentation. Just need to get back to you on that.
All right, but since that one was anonymous, if you could always post that in the Qlik community forum for Replicate, and we can address it there. That's a good place for that.
Okay, next question. When I schedule the task periodically for synchronizing data, do I have to run both of log stream staging task and stage data to target to the target task? Sorry about that.
Yep. When using log stream, right? Yeah. First we have to synchronize the parent task, log stream task, and as well as the stage task, because stage task is the one where it reads the changes from the log stream storage path. So both should be synchronized.
Thank you. All right, next question. Can we write Qlik Replicate logs alone to a separate drive or folder? I know we can separate data folder, which contains logs, but we need log folders alone separated.
No, because inside the data folder, we'll be having the log folder. So files, I think we cannot separate log folder into another drive. Yeah.
Ideation's good place for that one.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Any idea why this write is needed in an Oracle database for Replicate users? Grant select on system database directories to Replicate users.
I can take that out. Follow-up question and reply.
That's a Very specific, but again, that's another anonymous one. So if you want to post that question in a Qlik Replicate forum or open up a support case, we'll see if we can address that and get your response with some more detail. Any tips for scheduling tasks for Synchronize?
I think it's kind of vague. May need some more information on that. So it depends on your source and target.
Okay.
Okay. Next question. What is the optimal way to migrate a development task to production when the endpoint definition / names are different between production development and you do not want to recreate the task manually? I've tried exporting, alternating the JSON and importing it into production without success. Any takers?
I'll dig this up. I know I submitted an ideation a while ago because I worked with a customer who had a very similar setup, or they were like wanted more of a continuous delivery CI/CD process. And I'll try to follow up with that answer on this thread when I find it. But it was the same thing, was they were moving from dev to test to prod, and each time their source and targets were pointing to, you know, the respective dev test environment, dev test prod servers. So that is something that has come up, and there is an ideation request out there.
Great.
And also, I think import as JSONs, right? They can write PowerShell script to read tables from JSONs, or we have to check like whether we are having APIs on this. If we have, like, I think we can provide them.
Okay, we got just a handful of questions left. Let's see if we can get through them all before we run out of time. Regarding the merging task question, as a follow-up, I would like to merge an existing task that contains one or more tables with another task containing also other tables. Right now, I'm using a Python script to merge the manipulations, explicit included tables, and configurations from the exported JSON. So yeah, that was the one. Looking to merge existing tasks when importing.
Okay.
This one isn't really a question, but it's the same as I've said before. You can merge information from one task export a task JSON to another one. You just have to be careful merging stuff, because you do have to make sure all the information is in the right format. Tables belong in the table section, manipulations belong in the manipulation section, transformations and transformations, etc. Spaces, commas, all those do matter. If you do get something in an incorrect syntax, it's really, really hard to spot. I mean, normally if you mess up on one JSON, you can still export one from the task UI to get a new JSON, but keep an original backup just in case, so you have something to compare to and to work through getting something merged.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And in the JSON on the export of the JS, there should be the table list. So within the Python script, that's where you can pull and merge it to tables, depending on how you write your Python script.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, this person is using a single log stream and have multiple targets, and they are concerned about, because when they have they're doing their transactions, they have as they say, will have latencies and service issues. They want to know, is there any time sleep functions in Qlik Replicate?
There's no specific sleep functions, but you can use the scheduler to stop certain tasks at scheduled points in time. So you can use that to kind of stop a task at certain points of time and then start it back up with the scheduler.
It's a good tip. Next question. We use Hadoop as a target endpoint. Today, my customer likes to have targets replicated into separate HDFS folders, Based on my knowledge of setting endpoints and tasks up, I create an endpoint for each unique HDFS folder. This has resulted in many endpoints, but the other endpoint configurations are the same. Is there a better way to manage a single endpoint and control the HDFS folder based at the table level within a task?
No, Troy. Currently, like we're not having that option. They have to go with the separate tasks only, because folder like HDFS folder will be giving at the end source endpoint configuration itself. So if they want to write to multiple different HDFS folder, then yeah, they have to go with the different tasks only. We are not having at the table level. If they if they need that feature, I think they have to go with the ideation request.
Okay, thank you. Next to last question. How can I do CDC if the table has no primary key?
They can do CDC, but batch apply won't work, and slowly it will apply in one after another. And if they want to go with batch apply, yeah, actually, like they cannot, because it will split into that table batch itself will get splitted, and it will be applying one by one.
Updates will be missed for the most part. I mean, depending on endpoints, SQL Server, you have other options such as using Microsoft CDC change tables as a way to replicate without the primary keys, but depending on endpoints, you'll have to check the user guide to see if there's any workarounds.
Thanks. Is there a way for Qlik Replicate to run a post-load script after a full load completed?
Yes, depends on the source endpoint. There's post-processing commands you can pass, but it's depending on the source endpoint.
Okay, and we'll see if we can squeeze in one last question before we wrap up. How to resume the child task if log stream parent task has failed due to some reason?
Yeah, so if their logs are available at source side, and they can just resume the log stream task as well as the child task. But if the logs are not available at the source side, I mean, not the logs. If the logs are not available, obviously, they can check with their DB and they can restore the logs. But in case if due to some latency or something, if they want to start the log stream task with timestamp, then a different audit folder will be created with the timestamp. In that case, the child task also will they have to start with the same timestamp. But if they resume, they can resume. But if they start the log stream task with timestamp, then they have to start the child task also with the same timestamp.
Okay, that was all the time we had for today. I want to thank everybody for your participation, and we had some excellent questions. And absolutely thank you to our wonderful panel, everybody. This has been great. Here's a QR code that'll link to a survey that'll be sent to you about today's session, and you also get that once this Zoom session ends, I believe. And the recording of this will be available on Qlik Community and on the Qlik Support YouTube channel soon, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.